The small black speaker sat in the middle of the conference table like a dare. Mark, my son, leaned back, arms folded, telling the mediator he hadn't touched my retirement. Kelsey smiled. "We're just taking care of him," she said. Elena, my lawyer, pressed a button. A barroom hum poured out glasses, jukebox, Kelsey's whisper close to the mic. "Move it before he notices." A chair scraped. "Turn it off," someone yelled. 3 weeks earlier, I was in my kitchen on Lasky Road in Toledo, waiting on the percolator. February light came through the blinds. I'm 72. I ran parts at the Jeep plant for 34 years, paid off this little ranch, and lived steady on a small pension and Social Security and an IRA I treat like winter salt, use a pinch, only when the roads are bad. The first odd thing was a $99 Amazon Prime charge. I don't stream. 2 days later, a $20 delivery tip hit from a hardware store. I wrote both on a sticky note and told myself mistakes happen. Then the gas company hung a yellow tag on my fence past due disconnect on the 15th. I pay on time, always have. Since I'd slipped on the ice in January, Mark started coming by more. "Let us help Dad," he said, setting my pills in a plastic organizer. Kelsey took my flip phone and moved the bills to auto pay so I could just enjoy things. She said it like I was a guest in my own life. I told her I'd been paying bills longer than she'd been alive. She laughed. "We've got it." Admire, the pharmacy clerk, said my copay doubled because the plan showed a missed premium. I opened my check register, black ink, neat lines. Paid. She nodded toward the courtesy phone. Pride made me say I'd handle it later. After church that Sunday, my neighbor Jim Pollard met me in the lot. "You look tight around the eyes, Walt." I said I was fine. Jim is a retired school custodian who keeps extra batteries in the glove box. "Go see Rachel at Glass City Credit Union," he said. "Tell her Jim sent you." Rachel Kim pulled up my last 60 days. 3 ATM withdrawals at 2:07, 2:11, and 2:15 a.m. from a machine by the dugout on a Lexus. I go to bed at 9. Zelle transfers I didn't recognize, $280, $360, $540. In 6 weeks, $4,860 had walked out in little bites. "Do you share your debit card?" she asked. I shook my head. "Then someone has access." She printed the records. "Add a trusted contact," Rachel said, "and put a verbal password on your account, something no one would guess." I picked Tony Gwynn. One more thing, last week, someone called in to move a payment. Birth date was right, but the voice didn't sound like you. I flagged it and denied the change. She slid me a pen. My hand steadied as I signed. Back home, I set the statements by the percolator and tried to eat a ham sandwich that tasted like paper. Mark showed up in his HVAC jacket. "You seem stressed," he said. I told him the gas bill was acting funny. "Clerical," he said. "Happens all the time." He pulled a brochure for assisted living from his pocket. Single floor, good people. I told him I like my own coffee and my own couch. Kelsey breezed in with grocery bags and kissed my cheek. "We're just taking care of him," she told the room. Sleep came in short pieces. At dawn, I dug my flip phone out of the junk drawer and scrolled that old green screen. A voicemail blinked at 1:43 a.m., bar noise behind it. Kelsey's voice came low and close. "Move it before he notices." I played it again and watched the percolator bubble like it could help me think. Jim had mentioned a lawyer in Sylvania who wasn't a billboard. I called her. Elena Morales' office sits in a brick strip between a tax place and a nail salon. Elena is small, quick, and careful. I handed her the stack from Rachel, told her about the yellow tag, the prime charge, the ATM withdrawals, and the voicemail. I told her I didn't want a war with my own kid. Elena didn't interrupt. She wrote dates as I talked. "We start with paper," she said. "Then people, then a plan." She explained durable power of attorney and guardianship, the difference between help and control, and how banks record their own calls. "Ohio is one-party consent," she said, "but we'll lean on clean evidence, your voicemail, bank recordings, printed statements, and witness testimony." She called Rachel on speaker and asked to be added as a fraud contact information only. We added Jim as a trusted contact, set two-factor on my IRA custodian, and switched statements back to paper. Next step, Elena said we invite them to mediation. We don't accuse. We listen. If there's nothing, they're good. If there is, we give the truth a chair and let it sit. She opened a drawer and set a palm-sized speaker on the blotter. Sometimes sound tells a story better than we can. On the way home, I bought a small voice recorder that clicked like a pen. I promised I'd only use it when I was part of the conversation. That night, Mark texted, "We should talk about a POA. For safety." Kelsey added a heart. I put the recorder back in its box and slid it under the hamburger buns in the bread drawer. By Friday, Elena had a mediation time at a neutral office park. "Let them talk," she said in the elevator. "Don't fill silences. Facts don't need help." I ironed a shirt for the first time since Diane's wake and poured coffee into a travel mug. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner. The conference room blinds were half closed against a thin sun, which is how I came to sit across from my own boy, watching a tiny black speaker glow. "We're just taking care of him," Kelsey said again. Elena nodded once and pressed the button. The room filled with their voices from an hour when I sleep. "Turn it off," a voice snapped, and for once I didn't rush to make anyone comfortable. I kept my hands flat on the table and let the sound play. The mediator lifted a hand barroom audio still spilling from the little black speaker. He paused it with a fingertip. "Let's take a breath," he said. Mark stared at the wall clock like it owed him money. Kelsey's smile slid off her face. My lawyer, Elena, folded her hands and waited. For the first time in months, the room felt like it belonged to me again. They hadn't started with theft. They started with concern. 3 weeks earlier, I sat in Dr. Hammond's exam room while Kelsey did my talking. "He repeats himself," she told the nurse. "He gets confused about dates." When the doctor came in, he shook my hand and looked at me, not her. He asked about breakfast and meds. I answered. He nodded. I told him about the yellow gas disconnect tag on my fence. Kelsey cut in. "We moved his bills to auto pay, but he keeps mailing checks." Hammond raised a palm toward her and turned back to me. "I mailed one check," I said. "The rest I paid online. Something's off." He made a note. At the desk, Kelsey told the clerk to put her number as primary contact. I asked the clerk to keep mine at the top. She nodded. Back home that afternoon, Mark arrived with a manila folder. "Don't freak out, it's just a standard power of attorney," he said, sliding it across my table with a pen that wrote too smooth. "Pure safety." I looked at the signature line, my name waiting on a blank road. "I'll have Elena look it over," I said. Mark exhaled through his nose. "Lawyers make things complicated. Money makes things complicated," I said. He capped the pen too hard. Next morning, a woman from the utility company called to verify the cancellation of autopay by your authorized representative. I stood in my bathrobe at the toaster. I didn't cancel anything. "Then this is an error, and I'm fixing it now." When we hung up, I took the cheap voice recorder out of its box, the one that clicks like a pen, and set it by my keys. Only when I'm part of it, I told myself. Only to remember who said what. Jim stopped by with a sack of apples. We sat on the tailgate of his old Ford watching a salt truck on Lasky. "You look clearer," he said. I told him about Hammond's line in the folder. He snorted. "If somebody hands you a pen, find out what they're going to do with your signature." He asked if I'd gone to Glass City. I said Rachel added a verbal password and a trusted contact. "Good," he said. "Paper's a fence." Elena moved quick. She filed a fraud alert, froze my credit, and had the IRA custodian add two-factor to my flip phone. At her desk, she turned a yellow pad sideways and ruled it with a plastic ruler. We walked the timeline, $99 Amazon Prime I never ordered. A $20 delivery tip at a hardware store I haven't used in years. 3 ATM pulls at 2:07, 2:11, and 2:15 a.m. by the dugout. Zelle transfers 280, 360, 540. In 6 weeks, 4,860 walked out in little bites. "Walt, I'm not here to blow up your family," she said. "I'm here to turn the lights on." What do I say to them? Very little. Let the numbers talk. Kelsey's texts kept their sugar. "How are you feeling? Can I bring soup?" "Then do you still want us to handle the credit union stuff?" "It gets confusing," I answered. "I've got it." Mark called that night. "Dad, POA is normal. Everybody does it." "I'll sign one with Elena after we write it together," I said. Long breath. "So you don't trust me? I trust you to be my son. My money needs something tighter." He hung up. A letter came about an overdue premium on my Medicare Advantage supplemental, $112 and change. I'd never missed it. Elena had me bring it in. "We'll pay it so you don't get a gap," she said, "and then find out why it shows missed." She called the plan with me sitting there. The rep said a payment attempt bounced because the routing number on file had been changed and then changed back 2 days later. Who did that? I asked. It just shows authorized online, the rep said. Elena drew another line on the pad. Monday before mediation, I found a glossy flyer, Sunset Acres Assisted Living Your Next Chapter. A sticky note in Kelsey's hand said, "Tour Thursday." I set it under the percolator like a coaster and kept moving. Diane would have had a line for that dry, and it would make you laugh after it stung. The morning of mediation, I wore my cleanest flannel and the watch Diane gave me when I retired from the plant. Elena met me in the lot with 2 coffees. Remember, she said, we're not proving a case today. We're taking the temperature. The conference room smelled like lemon cleaner. The blinds were half shut. Carl, the mediator, laid out ground rules, short, calm, no theatrics. Mark went first. Dad's been slipping, he said, voice warm, eyes not. We've covered his bills. We take him to Meyer. We sit with him at the doctor. Kelsey nodded. We're just taking care of him. Carl turned to me. Mr. Haines. I did what Elena and I practiced, dates and amounts, no speeches. January 22, $280 to a name I don't know. January 29, $360. February 5, $540. 3 ATM pulls after 2 in the morning by the dugout. Gas tag for disconnect on the 15th. Medicare premium marked missed and reversed. Utility called to confirm an auto-pay cancellation I didn't request. I slid the statements across Corner Square. Elena asked permission to play a voicemail, the one that hit my phone while I was asleep in my own house. Carl looked at each of us. Okay. Elena set the speaker in the center and pressed a button. Barroom hum, glasses, a jukebox somewhere. Kelsey's whisper, move it before he notices. A chair scraped. Out of context, Mark said. Elena let the silence collect. Carl reached for the pause and didn't press it. Kelsey stood and put both palms on the table like she might tip it over. Turn it off, she said louder now. Carl pressed pause, not stop. We're going to step out, he said. Take 10. We'll discuss scope when we return. In the hallway, the coffee tasted like cardboard. You did fine, Elena said. Facts don't need help. I didn't know what they'd do next. I only knew the noise of their story finally had company, and my side of it had learned how to speak out loud. Elena and I sat in the hallway while the mediator typed behind a shut door. The coffee in my paper cup tasted like wet cardboard. That's enough for today, she said quietly. Potential fraud is outside what mediation can fix. We'll call it an impasse and move to court. Between now and then, we make our file clean. When Elena says clean, she means paper that stands up without me talking. We'd started the week before with simple fences credit freeze at all 3 bureaus, 2-factor on my IRA, a verbal password at the credit union. Now she wanted the bank's recordings, authenticated signed statements, and dates that lined up like fence posts. Rachel at Glass City Credit Union met us in a glass-walled office that smelled like toner and wet coats. I can't hand you internal audio, she said, but compliance can authenticate our calls and put a declaration on letterhead. Subpoena me and I'll appear. She printed statements and clipped them square. We can request ATM camera stills from the dugout machine. They're grainy, but the timestamps will match. Elena nodded. Yes. Back home, I spread the papers across my kitchen table. Zelle transfers to names I didn't know, 3 ATM pulls after 2 a.m. The Amazon Prime charge, a hardware delivery tip, a Medicare premium that bounced when someone changed my routing number. Elena drew it onto a yellow pad, date, time, amount, method, location. This isn't a mistake, she said. It's a pattern. When she totaled it, the number looked loud, $12,640 over 9 weeks. We called my Medicare plan from my flip phone on speaker. The rep confirmed a login from a new device at 10:42 p.m. Change submitted, reversed 2 days later. Who logged in, I asked. We can't see the name, she said, just device and time. We'll send a letter. Elena wrote letter and circled it twice. Jim showed up with a thermos and the kind of quiet that helps. We sat on my porch and watched a salt truck grind by. I told him about the mediation flare-up. A man scared of the tape knows what's on it, he said. He asked what I feared most. My grandson learning that money means you steer people like furniture, I said. Jim ziplocked a handful of screws he'd found in my driveway, like that solved at least one problem. Elena wanted one more thread tight, someone who'd heard Mark talk when he thought nobody official was listening. No ambushes, she said. just a person willing to stand up. Jim mentioned Eddie Nolan at the HVAC supply house. I drove to Nolan Supply, waited while the bell over the door chimed for the morning rush, and asked for Eddie. He came out with dust on his sleeves. Walt Haines, he said like the name was still worth something. Out by the loading dock, Eddie told me straight. A month back, Mark joked that the old man's nest egg would make a perfect down payment. Eddie thought it was a dumb boast until Mark counted cash and asked about a used Ford Transit with ladder racks. You want it in writing, he asked. Only if it's true, I said. He pulled a shipping pad from his pocket and wrote a short statement with dates and his cell number, then signed it like he was clocking out. Elena set our wall brick by brick. Exhibit A, credit union statements with timestamps. Exhibit B, the credit union's declaration about the recorded call that didn't sound like me. Exhibit C, the Medicare letter about the after-hours device login and the reversed routing change. Exhibit D, Eddie's statement. Exhibit E, the gas utility notice and reversal. Exhibit F, a log of Kelsey's 1:43 a.m. voicemail. That's enough to ask a judge for sunlight, Elena said, and to ask for restitution. I kept the little click pen recorder in my pocket the way you keep jumper cables in the trunk for when you're stuck not to see what you can start. I used it 3 times, 2 doctor visits where I was answering questions, and once at the bank with Rachel's permission so I could remember instructions. The rest I let alone. A clean case doesn't need tricks. The mediator emailed that the session was an impasse due to contested facts beyond scope. Elena filed for a hearing in Lucas County Probate Court and had a deputy set service. They'll be mad when the paper hits their door, she said. Let them be mad at the paper, not at you. For the first time in a while, I slept like the bed remembered me. Next afternoon, my phone buzzed failed. Pin tries on my debit card at a gas station in Temperance, 3 in a row. Rachel called 10 minutes later. We locked the card. Replacements ready. Bring ID. I signed for it with a pen that didn't try to run away. At the door, Rachel stopped me. Mr. Haines, she said, I grew up watching my parents argue in front of a teller window. You're doing this right. At home, I made pot roast because the house needed something that took all afternoon. Onions and brown meat warmed the walls, and for a second I could hear Diane setting plates. I stuck Eddie's statement on the fridge with a Buckeyes magnet, not because anybody needed to see it, but because I did. It said, I am not crazy. Reality happened. Elena called with dates. Hearing is 2 weeks from Wednesday, 10 a.m. Judge Carver, she said. We'll be early. I asked what to wear. You're normal, she said. Truth wins. She paused. If they try anything between now and then, call me first. Then call Rachel. Then call me again. That night, Mark texted, you didn't have to embarrass us. I stared at the screen until the letter stopped swimming, then put the phone face down. The deputy's knock came after lunch the next day. He handed me 2 envelopes and tipped his hat. Down the block, I watched him turn into Mark's driveway. I didn't open mine. I set both on the table and placed my hands flat beside them, the same way I had when the speaker started to talk. The Lucas County Courthouse smells like old wood and damp wool in February. I got there early because Elena said early is a kind of armor. We stood in line for the metal detector with a row of people holding plastic tubs and worries. I took my belt off, put my flip phone in the tray, and felt lighter without it. Elena smiled like I'd done the first hard thing of the day. Mark and Kelsey arrived 5 minutes before 10 with a man in a tight suit and a haircut that looked expensive. Mark looked through me. Kelsey looked at the floor. We sat on opposite pews in the probate courtroom under a seal that said in Latin what my grandfather used to say in plain words, tell the truth and quit dancing around it. Case number ending 5-1, the clerk called, in RE guardianship of Walt Haines. We stood. Judge Linda Carver walked in with a stack of slim files and the kind of calm that makes other people decide if they can live with honesty. Good morning, she said. Let's keep this simple. If you speak, you'll be sworn. If you're sworn, you'll be clear. Mark's lawyer started soft. Your Honor, this is a family matter. My client and his wife have been caregivers in good faith. Mr. Haines has had difficulty managing finances since a fall. No one is trying to take anything. They've covered bills, rides to appointments, food. There's confusion here, not malice. Elena stood like a person who likes facts more than adjectives. We're not here to make anyone a villain, she said. We're here because money left Mr. Haines's accounts at 2 in the morning and his utility nearly cut gas on the 15th. We're here because a routing number was changed at 10:42 p.m. and reversed 2 days later. We're here because a bank recorded a caller failing security who didn't sound like my client. Guardianship is a serious restriction. It is unnecessary here. Mr. Haines is competent and someone has been helping themselves. The judge nodded. Business records first, she said. Elena handed up a thin binder. Exhibit A, she said, Glass City Credit Union. Statement 60 days with timestamps. Exhibit B, Credit Union Declaration, authenticating a recorded service call and rejecting a change for voice mismatch. Exhibit C, Medicare letter confirming after-hours device login and the reversed routing change. Exhibit D, gas utility, disconnect notice and reversal. The clerk marked them. Paper clicked. The sound felt like sunlight landing on a dusty room. Call your first witness, Judge Carver said. Rachel Kim took the stand in a gray sweater with a name badge that made people straighten. She swore in and sat straight. Elena kept it easy. Ms. Kim, what's your position? Branch Manager, Glass City Credit Union, Alexis Road. Do you know Mr. Haines by name? He's been a member 15 years. Did you review his transactions for January and February? Yes. What did you see 3 ATM withdrawals between 2:07 and 2:15 a.m. from a machine next to the dugout? Multiple Zelle transfers to payees Mr. Haines didn't recognize. Total of $12,640 across 9 weeks. Was there a call regarding a payment change? Yes. It's our policy to record service calls. The caller provided correct date of birth and last 4 of SSN, but the voice did not match Mr. Haynes's voice on file. We denied the change, noted the discrepancy, and added a verbal password at his request. Mark's lawyer stood for cross. Ms. Kim, people often share cards with family, don't they? We instruct members not to. Could these ATM withdrawals have been Mr. Haines forgetting? We go by the records. They show times and locations inconsistent with his usual profile. He reported them as unauthorized, so you can't say who pressed the buttons? No, only that they were pressed. It landed clean. No drama, just limits. Elena didn't push past what Rachel could give. No further questions, she said. Rachel stepped down looking like a person who had done her job. Elena put me on the stand next. I raised my right hand. It felt strange lifting it in front of my own boy. Mr. Haines, Elena said, do you pay your bills? Yes. Did you authorize the 3 ATM withdrawals after 2 a.m. by the dugout? No. Did you move your Medicare routing number at 10:42 p.m.? No. Are you asking for a guardian? No, I'm asking for my money to stop walking off at night. Mark's lawyer came up like he'd practiced sounding kind. Sir, you slipped on ice in January, correct? Yes. You were under stress. Grief is a long project, but I know my numbers. You sometimes repeat yourself. Sometimes I repeat the truth if people aren't hearing it. He smiled like that was cute. Do you love your son? Yes. Would you like a relationship with him after this? Yes. Fences make for better relationships. The judge lifted her eyes and wrote something. Elena called no more from my side yet. Your Honor, we have a third-party witness for limited testimony, she said. If opposing counsel insists the transfers were caregiving logistics, we can address statements made outside Mr. Haynes's presence. The judge looked at Mark's lawyer. He shrugged like he had cards he liked better. We reserve cross. Mark's lawyer called Kelsey. She swore in and smoothed her skirt like it was trying to stand up without her. Mrs. Haines, he said, what do you do for your father-in-law? Everything no one else does, she said. I handle his bills, his rides, his medicine, his groceries. He gets confused. He once paid the same bill twice. He nodded. Did you ever steal from him? No. Did you ever move money without his knowledge? We handled transfers for his care. It's our house, too. A muscle jumped in her cheek when she said it. Elena stood. Mrs. Haines, do you recognize this number? She pointed to my printout with the 1:43 a.m. voicemail entry. Many people leave voicemails. Elena didn't blink. Is this your voice I don't remember? Elena didn't fill the silence. It stretched until the fluorescent lights buzzed louder than the clock. Kelsey looked down. People say things when they're tired. The judge held up a palm. Business records came in. We're not going to argue emotions. If there's more, bring me more. If there isn't, we're going to finish before lunch. Elena nodded. 2 brief items, she said. First, Mr. Haynes's IRA custodian confirms two-factor now requires his physical device. Second, we ask to admit a certified copy of the Medicare letter and to note for the record a device login at 10:42 p.m. from a new device routing change reversed 2 days later. Admitted, the judge said. She turned to Mark's table. Mr. Haines, do you have witnesses? Mark looked at his lawyer. His lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client can testify to his good faith caregiving. He believed he had consent. Consent, the judge repeated, is not a synonym for access. Who else can speak to money moving? The lawyer opened his mouth and closed it. Elena glanced at me and then at the side door. Your Honor, with the court's permission, we'd like to call a brief, neutral, and HVAC supplier who had business with Mr. Mark Haines during the period in question. Name, the judge asked. Edward Nolan, Elena said. The judge nodded to the bailiff. Bring him. The bailiff disappeared through the side door. Mark's jaw worked, grinding something that wasn't food. Kelsey twisted her ring until her knuckle blanched. I sat on the wooden pew and felt the building breathe old wood, settling a child 2 rows back, whispering someone's winter coat rustling. I didn't pray exactly. I just thought about Diane's porch light and how it always came on 5 minutes before I pulled in the drive. The side door opened with a soft hinge squeal. Eddie Nolan stepped through in work boots with dust on the toes and a shipping pad tucked under one arm. Mark's lawyer's pen slipped from his fingers and clattered on the table. Eddie swore in like a man who respects rooms with flags. Elena kept it short. State your name and your work. Edward Nolan. Sales at Nolan Heating Supply. Do you know Mark Haines? Yes, ma'am. He buys parts. I've known him 5-6 years. Did he say anything to you in January or February about his father's money? Eddie looked at the judge, not at Mark. He said, my old man's nest egg is going to get me into a transit with ladder racks. I'm done nursing that junk van. He said it more than once. Did you sell him a van? No, I sell parts, not vans. But a guy up the street has a used lot. Mark asked me if 20% down would hold one till spring. Do you have dates? Eddie read them off his shipping pad. They matched the withdrawals like teeth on a zipper. Mark's lawyer stood. Mr. Nolan, you don't have a recording, do you? No. So this is just something you're saying now? It's something I'm saying under oath, Eddie said. The judge's pen stopped. You could feel the room agree. Elena called no one else. Your Honor, we rest. We request denial of guardianship, a protective order for Mr. Haynes's accounts, and a restitution schedule of $12,640 payable over 24 months. We also request a referral to Adult Protective Services for a safety check and resources. Mark's lawyer went to misunderstanding like it was a grocery aisle. My client believed he had consent. He moved funds around for care. He was overwhelmed. If there were mistakes, they were not malicious. The judge looked down at the statements, then at me. Mr. Haines, do you manage your day-to-day? Yes. Do you want a guardian? No. Do you want your son punished? I thought about that one. I want my money home and my door safe. Judge Carver leaned back. Caregiving is not a power of attorney, and a power of attorney is not a hunting license. This is not a guardianship case. Petition denied. She tapped the binder. I'm entering an order protecting Mr. Haynes's accounts. Mr. Haines remains in full control of his finances. Mr. Mark Haines, you will cooperate with the credit union and IRA custodian regarding any investigation. You will make restitution in the amount of $12,640 over 24 months, first payment due in 30 days. I'm referring this matter to APS for follow-up. Mr. and Mrs. Haines, if you violate these terms, we will revisit today with less patience. She looked at me last. Mr. Haines, if you want help, you decide who helps you. Court is adjourned. The gavel was a small sound that everyone heard. Kelsey wiped at nothing on her cheek. Mark stared at the table like he'd lost his keys and the table had eaten them. In the hallway, a reporter I didn't recognize asked if I wanted to comment for Channel 11. I'm going to lunch, I said. I recommend the cafeteria ham sandwich. It tastes like victory if you're hungry enough. She laughed, then realized I wasn't joking. Elena and I stood on the courthouse steps in February sun that tried its best. Now we do boring things, she said, smiling. Boring is safety. We walked to Glass City Credit Union like two people who have time. Rachel met us with a folder. Protective order came through fast, she said. We'll add an alert on any attempted withdrawals outside your profile. If a teller sees anything funny, they call you and Elena. She changed my debit card PIN while I looked away and typed it. Same verbal password, Tony Gwynn, I said. She grinned. Good batting average. We sat with a notary and signed a transfer on death for the house because I'd paid for the boards and the mortgage and the view of the maple, and I wanted the state to take the scenic route around my affairs when I was gone. Elena set an appointment with a CPA named Donna for a revocable living trust that would hold the house and a conservative account marked Grandson Education CD. You'll be the trustee now, Elena said. You can name a successor you trust. It doesn't have to be family. I thought of Jim sanding a porch rail he didn't have to touch. I'll ask him, I said. He'll probably say he doesn't want the headaches. That's how you know he's right for it, Elena said. At home, I changed the locks. Not because I am a fortress, but because I am a porch. Porches have doors. Doors need rules. Jim came over with his drill and a new deadbolt that clicked like a promise. We put in a motion light that made the front steps glow. Look at that, Jim said. You could land a plane. Just me, I said. Coming home. Mark called that night. Dad, you didn't have to drag us through a courtroom. I didn't drag you anywhere, I said. Your choices did. He breathed like he'd been running. You really want me to pay it all back, every dime. You're lucky I was raised to count dimes, I said. He got quiet. I'm not a thief. Then this will be easy, I said. Kelsey texted separate. It was Mark's idea. He said we had consent. I was just trying to keep things from falling apart. I typed and erased for a while. I landed on this, you're both adults. You both knew. She sent back a paragraph that tried to repoint the blame like siding. I set the phone face down and turned on the porch light. Next morning, I went to see Donna, the CPA, in a low building that smelled like carpet cleaner and tax season. We set the trust with plain language I could read without a law dictionary. I stayed trustee while I'm able. If I'm not, Elena and Jim can step in together, the kind of together where two keys have to turn. We added a rule, nothing big moves without two voices and a note on paper. Donna smiled. You're not the first man to spend more time picking out a snowblower than a successor trustee. The snowblower stays where I can see it, I said. She laughed, then pushed a stack of copies my way. So does this. Rachel called from the credit union. Your first restitution check posted Mr. Haines. Payroll deduction. I thanked her and hung up and sat quiet at my kitchen table. I wasn't happy. Happy is what you feel at a ball game when your team comes from behind. This was something else, like a porch post cut plumb after leaning a long time. That afternoon, Mark came by. He didn't knock, just stood on the walk with his hands in his jacket pockets, as if knocking might cost extra. I stepped out and pulled the door behind me. We stood under the new motion light. Dad, he said then, nothing. The February air found every gap in my coat. I want to see my son, he said finally. You can, I said. You can see him right here on Saturdays with notice. You don't come inside unless I invite you. You don't ask for money. You don't use the word consent like a crowbar. You pay what the judge said when she said. You don't talk about me at bars. He looked at the concrete. What do I say to people? You say you're making it right. He nodded a little like someone had just handed him something heavier than it looked. When he left, I made coffee. I slid the small black speaker into the junk drawer under rubber bands and a tape measure. Not as a trophy, as a tool I might never pick up again. I wrote a check to kickstart the Grandson Education CD because small starts matter. I filled out a little card for the church's food pantry in Diane's careful block, letters the way she used to, even though it was my hand now. Then I went outside and flipped the switch on the porch light and stood a minute in its wide yellow circle. The maple held its dark shape against a sky that kept its cold. A train horn blew somewhere on Jackman Road. I thought about locks and lights and the difference between shutting people out and showing them the way home. The bulb hummed steady as a heart that knows how to keep a beat. 2 weeks after the order, the first payroll deduction hit my account like a tap on the shoulder. Rachel called cheerful as a clear ledger. Restitution posted Mr. Haines. Right on schedule. I thanked her and set the phone down next to the percolator. Steam rose, coffee popped. The house felt like it remembered me. Adult Protective Services called that afternoon. A man named Jerome came by in a county windbreaker and wiped his boots at the door without being asked. Mr. Haines, I'm not the boogeyman, he said, smiling. We make sure elders aren't getting steamrolled. We connect folks to resources. You seem steady. He asked short questions and listened in the quiet way that makes answers keep their shape. You got people, he asked at the end. I got a neighbor named Jim with 2 good hands and half a garage of tools, I said. I got a banker who knows my face. I got a lawyer who likes paper. I got a church that serves pancakes the last Saturday of the month. He wrote strong supports on his form and stood. Call me if anything turns, he said. We don't disappear when the gavel does. Saturday, Mark brought my grandson Tyler to the porch at 10 sharp. That was the rule, Saturdays with notice outside unless I invite him in. Tyler wore a Buckeyes hoodie too big for him and carried a shoebox. We built something at school, he said, eyes bright. Inside was a popsicle stick bridge with a quarter taped dead center to prove it could hold. It's about tension and support, he said. The teacher says triangles don't lie. I set it on the porch rail and pressed the coin with my finger. The bridge held. Triangles don't lie, I said, looking at Mark. He looked away. Grandpa Tyler said, Are you mad at Dad? No, I said. I'm building something with him. It needs time and rules. Mark stood with his hands in his jacket pockets, the posture of a man who had discovered standing still is work. Do you want to come in? I asked Tyler. We can make grilled cheese. He looked up at his dad. Mark nodded. Go on. I let them both in. Some rules bend when they carry their own responsibility. We ate at the counter while the pan hissed. Tyler told me about a science fair and a field trip to the firehouse. Mark wiped a crumb and didn't ask for money and didn't say the word consent and didn't pretend to forget the judge's timetable. When they left, I stood under the motion light and watched them walk to the car. The light clicked off after 30 seconds, then on again when a neighbor's cat trotted through. You can't rig a sensor to forgive. It just does its job. Elena and I spent a Tuesday morning at Donna the CPA's office, finalizing the trust. We added plain rules, 2 signatures for anything that breathes heavy, no loans to family period, all statements mailed, Rachel and Jim remain trusted contacts, and the grandson education CD rolls over automatically unless I say otherwise. Donna slid the binder across the desk. You've built a boring fortress, she said. Boring keeps out fires. On the way home, I stopped at Mayer for bread and batteries. At the checkout, a cashier named Glenn leaned in. I saw you on Channel 11, he said, voice low. They didn't use your name, but I know that gavel room. I did the same with my sister when Mom passed. People confuse help with open bar. Good on you. He bagged my bread careful as glass. You want carryout, I got it, I said, and I did. That night, Kelsey texted, I lost shifts. People talk. I typed for a long time and erased more than I wrote. In the end, I sent actions echo. Make better ones. She didn't reply. I turned on the porch light and sat with my coffee while February scraped its chair across the street. Wednesday, Jim found me on the driveway with a shovel and took it from my hand like he always meant to. Donna called, he said. Says you want me as backup trustee? You trying to make me respectable? No, I said. I'm trying to make my money mind me after I can't mind it. He shook his head. I'll do it, Walt. But only if Elena's name stays on the line with mine. That's the design, I said. 2 keys. He leaned on the shovel. You know what 2 keys means, right? It means neither of us sneaks in to do you a favor. I'm all out of favors, I said. We shook hands like men who know what is heavier, the lock, not the door. Sunday at church, Pastor Irene announced a short forum after service on elder financial safety. She looked at me when she said paper trails and trusted contacts. In the fellowship hall, I poured coffee and answered 2 questions and let the banker from another congregation talk. I said one sentence that stuck to the drywall. Care isn't control. People nodded like they'd seen both. Midweek, Mark called. Dad, the payment feels like punishment. It's math, I said. Math doesn't feel. He let that live a second. Are we well, we're seeing someone? Good, I said. A counselor, a guy from our insurance. He says we should apologize. But I don't know where to start. Start with the truth, I said. Start with, I took what wasn't mine and told myself it was for the best. Then stop talking and listen to what comes back. The line held a breath big enough to move furniture. You're not going to forgive me if I say the right words, are you? Forgiveness isn't a coupon, I said. It's a boundary with a door. Rachel called with a suggestion. We're holding a seniors banking class next month. Scams, auto pay passwords, all that. Would you sit in You don't have to speak. I'll sit, I said. Maybe pour coffee. We have a machine, she said. Bring stories. I laughed. I have one, I said. It's short. The county sent a plain envelope with the APS follow-up form box checked no further action at this time. I filed it behind the gas notice and the Medicare letter and the bank declarations all in a folder labeled light with a piece of masking tape. I put the folder where the snowblower key used to hang. Things change. The snowblower started on the second pull anyway. That Friday, Jim and I went to the VFW fish fry because fried fish tastes like Ohio Friday night, and the world had not taken that away. The room rattled with trays and raffle shouts, and the announcer mispronouncing names with the joyful confidence of a man who's never let the truth ruin a drawing. Folks nodded to me. Nothing big, just the kind that keeps you tied to the mast in rough water. Eddie raised a plastic cup from across the room. I lifted my coffee back. On the drive home down Jackman Road, snow stitched across the blacktop in long light threads. I drove the speed limit because it was enough. At the house, I turned on the porch light and stood in its circle. I sent a photo of the light to Tyler with no caption. He sent back the bridge quarter on the middle, his thumb pressed to prove what triangles could handle. I saved it. The wind found the chime Diane had hung and made a small note like a toy piano key. It matched something in my chest, a clunk that had always been there suddenly running true. The next morning, the church pantry needed hands. I stacked cans and wrote the count in black marker. A woman I didn't know told me her brother had moved in and brought trouble. He says he's helping, she said, but the light bill says otherwise. I said the only line that felt honest. Help is with, control is over. She wrote it down on the corner of a donation slip and tucked it in her purse like bus fare saved for a storm. On Sunday night, Mark texted a photo of him at a second shift job he picked up sweeping at the hockey arena. It's honest, he wrote. I typed, that's where this starts. He didn't ask for money. He didn't explain himself. For now, that was enough to sleep. I keep the small black speaker in the junk drawer under the tape measure and rubber bands and the blue-handled scissors that never cut right. It isn't a trophy. It's a reminder that voices have weight, and if you let them, they'll tilt the room. You don't beat a tilt by yelling. You put the table on level ground and set a cup in the middle and watch it sit there steady as a porch post. The Friday fish fry at the VFW drew me like a porch light draws a moth. I went alone on purpose. Before I crossed the threshold, I told myself the truth the way Elena does, short and plain, I'm okay. I'm steady. My son is not my banker, and I'm not his account. The line for fish wrapped past a bulletin board papered with bake sales and lost cats. Somebody's radio by the Friars played a Motown station thin as a pocket comb. It smelled like cornmeal and winter coats. I carried my tray to a table near the wall, where I could see both doors, a habit I picked up after the court day without noticing. Men in ball caps bumped shoulders and argued about whether the engine light in a '04 Silverado means anything you need to fix today. A woman set her tray across from me with a polite nod. Florence, she said, call me Flo. She wore a VFW auxiliary pin and had the kind of eyes that can spot a bingo cheater at 30 yards. You're Walt. Yes, ma'am. I heard you say one sentence in the fellowship hall Sunday. Care isn't control. I wrote it on my grocery list so it wouldn't leave me before I got home. She picked up a hush puppy and broke it in half. My nephew moved in last spring. He calls himself a caregiver. What he's good at is using my debit card for pizza. Change your PIN, I said. Add a verbal password at the bank. Pick a word he can't guess like an old ball player or the tool you hate. I hate Phillips head screwdrivers, she said. They always cam out and make you swear. Then Phillips it is, I said. We chewed in companionable quiet. She patted my hand once like a punctuation mark and went to help with raffle tickets. They pulled the 50-50. I didn't win. Eddie won 6 pounds of frozen perch and looked briefly terrified about explaining it to his wife. I sipped coffee and watched people be exactly who they've been for 30 years. The room was loud with ordinary. On my way out, a young reporter with hair too neat for a fry night blocked my path, breathless. Mr. Haines. Do you have a second? I'm out of seconds for TV, I said gentle. She lowered her mic. Off the record then. My grandma's neighbor's 81. Her son moved her in and says he's helping. There's a new flat screen and no heat. I gave her Rachel's card. Tell her to call and tell her to tell the teller the truth all the way to the end. Tellers love the truth. I drove home slower than the speed limit. Slow is how you keep from missing the street you've always lived on. The porch light blinked on when I pulled up. Jim's motion sensor works like a conscience unfussy exact. I stood in that circle and listened to the neighborhood hold itself together with mailboxes and dogs and men dragging trash cans that bumped the curb. Inside, I opened the folder labeled Light and flipped through the pages the gas notice. The Medicare letter, the credit union declaration, Eddie's statement, the judge's order with the number I know now by heart, 12640, the APS no further action box checked, the trust binder index with Donna's tidy bullet points. I put my finger on each thing and said what it was out loud like a catechism. My chest unclenched a notch I didn't know was pulled tight. The phone rang. Tyler. Grandpa got second at the science fair. The bridge held. What beat you? A volcano that actually smoked. Smoke's always been flashy, I said. Bridges win wars. He laughed. Dad says I can come Saturday. Can we build something? We can, I said. Bring safety glasses. We said goodnight the way you do when it matters, no rush, no performance. Saturday came with the clean cold that makes breath look like proof. Mark texted we're on the way. I set 2 sawhorses in the garage and laid a pine board across them. We made a stool. Tyler measured. I held the wood. Mark drove screws with the care of a man who has learned what force breaks and what pressure holds. The drill whined and bit and stopped, and Tyler whooped when the legs didn't wobble. Triangles, he said, patting the brace. They don't lie. We burned our initials into the underside with a cheap wood-burning pen that smelled like a bad idea, TWM. Mark put his palm on the wood and kept it there a second, like checking for heartbeat. Thanks, he said, eyes wet and not hiding it. For the chance. It isn't a chance, I said. It's a rule. Keep it and you get to keep the stool. They left and the garage held the shape of us for a while. Noise-gone sawdust settling like a thin blanket. I swept and hung the goggles on a nail. Diane would have said the stool was ugly and useful, and that's the kind that outlives fashion. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a note to myself in block letters. Porch light, 7:00 p.m. At 7, I flipped the switch and watched the yellow spill onto the snow. I took a photo and wrote the caption in my head. If you needed a sign to set a boundary, this is it. I didn't post it. I'm not a poster. I'm a porch. I thought about people listening to this, folks my age in houses like mine, with drawers full of rubber bands and tape measures and a small speaker that could tell the truth if it had to. I thought about men who go quiet when money gets loud, and women who hold the books because they always have, and kids who grow into wolves by accident. I wanted to say one thing that wouldn't sound like a lecture. It came out like this. If you're in trouble, tell your teller. Tell your doctor. Tell your neighbor who brings apples. Put it on paper. Put your name on your life again. If this story put a light on your porch, if it reminded you to make a password, a ball player and a trustee, a friend share it with someone who needs a fence more than a fight. If you want more of these plain tales with true endings, subscribe and sit with me next time. Bring coffee. Bring your own stubborn. We'll keep the light on.